Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to 2026. So I hope you guys have finalized what's the new year resolution be like, and moreover in terms of aviation safety, well, unfortunately it's not a good start at all, especially with a very shocking tragedy in Indonesia involving an ATR 42-500 belonging to Indonesia Air, which is a chartered service which now officially being operating under Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries as a marine surveillance aircraft. So carrying 11 people unexpectedly crashed at Makassar. So now it's time to understand the sequence of events, what went wrong to this marine surveillance aircraft. So without further ado guys, let's get started right away. Alright guys, so as you can see on my screen, so this is the ATR 42-500 involved in this accident. So this aircraft is registered as Papa Kilo Tango Hotel Tango with its MSN registration as 611. So this aircraft is powered by two Canadian-built Pratt & Whitney's PW127E engines with the shaft horsepower range at 2,400. And moreover, this airframe age is over 25 years old, which is obviously a very old airframe indeed. And well, this ATR 42 is a smaller variant compared to its larger variant ATR 72, which is heavily used on its regional connectivities. But ATR 42s are very less involved in regional connectivity, but moreover, ATR 42s are involved in military use so far. Right, so coming to its history of this airframe, so it was first delivered to Air Dolomiti, which is an Italian regional carrier, back in 2001, registered as India Alpha Delta Lima Zulu. You can see that picture on your screen right there. And then back in 2010, this aircraft was transferred to Indonesia Air, which is a charter air service. So they reconfigured this aircraft into a airborne surveillance aircraft, and then later in 2025, which is last year, this was handed over to Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries via Government of Indonesia. So they have reconfigured it again to use it as a marine surveillance aircraft. So now based on the reports what I have seen so far, so they have released the pilot who involved in this horrible tragedy. It was named as Andy Dahananto, and unfortunately he was one among the 11 crew on board the flight. So again, if we segregate the 11 passengers, so there were 3 passengers and 8 crew members alongside the pilot, who is Andy Dahananto, which I have already told you. They unfortunately perished in this unexpected crash at Makassar. Right, so now let's get into the Flightradar24 data, understanding its trajectory of this marine surveillance aircraft. Alright guys, so as you can see on my screen, so this is the Flightradar24 data of ATR 42-500 with its call sign as mentioned here as Papa Kilo Tango Hotel Tango. It's not a normal civilian aircraft, it's a marine surveillance aircraft here. Right, so now let's zoom in to Yogyakarta. That's the departure airport right here. Let's zoom in. So as you can see, so like I told you previously, so they were carrying 11 passengers. Among them there were 3 passengers and 8 crew members. Right, so now let's start the time frame at 1:04 AM UTC. Right, so let's play the footage. So the plane departed at Yogyakarta's Adi Sucipto International Airport via runway 11. So now let's look at the trajectory right away. Exactly at 1:08 AM the plane took off, and let me show you that trajectory graph right here. So the ground speeds at 194 knots is gaining properly well. So altitude is now configured to 11,000 feet with 292 knots as it was recorded here. So let's zoom out and let us proceed to the first quarter of the flight, exactly right here. Okay, so this is the initial climb took place. So you can see here it's still maintaining at 11,000 feet, and as soon as we reach near to Sangkapura island, which is right here, now here is something that I am not at all convinced. I mean, seriously to say, this data is very inaccurate here, because I don't know if I'm correct or wrong, because here, strangely to say, that the plane suddenly descended very rapidly. Again, I don't know, look at this, the speed rate is at 247 knots, and again, you know, it stopped at until 3,000 feet, and then again it climbed again to 6,000 feet. Again it reached it back to 11,000 feet. Again, this portion here, I'm not so exactly sure why the plane descended very rapidly. I have no clue at all, but I think this data is a bit incomplete. I think this has to be verified again via flight data recorder. That might give us a little clue exactly what's the flight path looks like here, or flight trajectory looks like here. Right, so now let's scroll forward even more. Again, like I shown you here in a graph, it's showing here at 11,000 feet. And then again, all of a sudden the plane started to descend slowly with the same speed at 247 knots, and then it's maintaining at altitude of 2,000 feet. So exactly right here. So these dotted lines might be a possible flight path, but again, the FR24 hasn't verified this flight path yet, so they have to update it. But again, this altitude, I had one thought here. Could it be possible that since this is a marine surveillance aircraft, so is this aircraft performing a surveillance activity at 2,000 feet? So if I am right or wrong in this case, again, it might be, because usually surveillance aircrafts usually operates at an altitude between 2,000 to 3,000 feet in general. But this readings, again, I cannot verify that it's doing surveillance activity at this altitude, but logically it does. But again, since this data is not complete overall, so again it has to be verified via Flightradar24. Even I checked in the ADSB website also. You can see that picture on your screen. The last known location was recorded was exactly right at Sangkapura, exactly right here where the recording stopped. Now that's when I realized that okay, maybe this data might be incomplete, so it has to be refined by the FR24 to check and see what it is. Or maybe, like I told you, we have to rely on the flight data recorder to understand its trajectory. Now, skipping all of this, you can see again it climbed directly to 6,000 feet as what the location is shown right here, just 15 miles to Makassar. And this is the last known contact made at 5,150 feet at 221 knots, exactly where the plane has crashed at Bulasaraung National Park. And if you can see that images on your screen, and even the videos which was published by one of the eyewitnesses showing the weather, it's very foggy and visibility is very low too. So between 4:05 and 4:20 a.m., the air traffic control notices the marine surveillance aircraft's flight path deviating off course. So they have warned to correct their flight path, but however, there's no update on the crew, but unexpectedly it crashed at Makassar's Bulasaraung National Park, just right there. So this is the Makassar's Sultan Hasnuddin Airport, which was supposed to land here. and this is the crash site here. So it's 15 miles away from it. So I've also managed to get the Simbrief nav data plan. So I try to verify this in reference to this flight path, and I'm going to show you the comparison between this Flightradar24 data and the Simbrief map which I have prepared it. So I'm going to show you both and get you that clarification exactly what could be the possible flight path here. Alright guys, so as you can see on my screen, so on the left side is the Flightradar24's flight path of the marine surveillance aircraft, and on the right side is the Simbrief data which I prepared via Navigraph. So you can check out at Navigraph website and you can create your own flight plans. But one thing that how I created this flight path is via this. This is the IRAC cycle. So IRAC cycle is nothing but aeronautical information and regulation control. So this is a part of the ICAOs or International Civil Aviation Organization procedures, where every 28 days the flight paths like or waypoints will be modified based on the particular destination that you are preferring to. So this IRAC cycle, designated as IRAC 2513, this is the latest of all from December 2025 to January 21st 2026, and obviously today is 18th of January, right? So this is still the latest IRAC cycle that it is using in. All right, so now we are going to understand the exact flight path where could have been operating it, this marine surveillance aircraft, in reference to the Simbrief. So we're going to validate and see if they are aligning it or not. Right, so now let's zoom into Yogyakarta here at FR24, and now let's zoom in Yogyakarta right here at Simbrief. Now you can clearly see that this waypoint, Whiskey Alpha Hotel India, so actually it's not a waypoint, this is the ICAO airport code of Yogyakarta. Okay, so now notice this carefully here guys. Now in FR24 it shows that exactly at 1:04 a.m. UTC this marine surveillance aircraft took off via runway 11 and it took left via Oscar Foxtrot. Okay, so this is the airport right here. So it took off right here and took left towards Oscar Foxtrot right here. Okay, you can check the angle carefully. So they didn't follow these waypoints actually, so I think this is not needed, but we are going to analyze the flight path of this in reference to the Simbrief data what I've gathered like I told you before. Right, now the next waypoint they're going to pass is via Surakarta, that is Sierra Oscar is the next waypoint, and from Surakarta's Sierra Oscar waypoint they will be shifting to left towards Salatiga. So now I'm going to zoom out, and there you can see is Salatiga. How you can recognize this is, check out these two lakes. Okay, one on the left and one on the right side. So what it clearly means is that this flight actually made diversion from its original Iraq flight path. So it made a parallel flight path actually here. So this is the first deviation what we have noticed. Okay, so this lake, you remember this is Waduk Kedung Ombo, and this is also a Waduk Kedung Ombo on the map, right? So they actually managed to pass through Waduk Kedung Ombo and then they made a parallel flight path. So as we go on through here, let me zoom out a bit here and let's continue through Simbrief. So they're following this parallel flight path towards the next waypoint called Lasem. So Lasem, nothing but I can abbreviate it as Lima Alpha Sierra Echo Mike. Right, so now compare both of these maps here. You can clearly see where exactly Lissem is. So Lissem is exactly connected through here. So like I told you, the first half of the flight, they follow the Iraq cycle. However, with only one deviation is towards Salatiga, is what I've told you, right here. Okay, and now the first half of the flight is well covered. Now let's go to the mid-flight. From Lesen, we are going to the next waypoint called Siput, which is located exactly at Sengkapura. And here in FR24, Siput would be approximately right over here. Siput should be here. But the only thing in this FR24 data showing this inconsistent readings here is, again, that has to be very well checked. But even the altitude readings also, let me show you that in a graph here. This is exactly at the waypoint Siput only. You can see that the plane suddenly descended rapidly, again with some unusual speeds. This is, like I told you before guys, this is not a valid flight trajectory here near Siput, so that has to be checked. So this has to be properly verified, like I told you before. Right, so after crossing Siput, now Sangkapura is done. Now let's go to next checkpoint called Aquino. Now Aquino is located at this island chain. Now recognize these two island chains here. Okay, now let me zoom out and show you. This is where exactly it is connected. Okay, Aquino should be exactly here, right? So the dotted lines shows that it's a possible flight path, but however this aircraft was operating at 2000 feet below 2000 feet above sea level here, so it's performing a surveillance activity just like what you can see here in this graph. So let me show you here. Look at the speeds, 230 knots, 2000 feet. It was almost right here on these dotted lines. So mostly it's following these waypoints. Okay, so let's see throughout the next if there is any change. Okay, next is the waypoint Bicod. Bicod is over here. This could be Bicod. Bicod should be right here, and this should be approximately way closer to Aquino. It should be right here exactly. If you see these three island chains here, if you can clearly see that, this should be here. It should be straight rather than going left. So again, that has to be double checked by the FR24 team. Right, then next goes to Bimak. Bimak should be almost here. You can see these two island chains and these two island chains here. I hope you can clearly see it guys here. So it's approximately here, Bimak. And then we are going to the next checkpoint, that is Ayono. So we are now heading towards Makassar. Right, so we are now at South Sulawesi Island at Makassar here. So now let's zoom in towards this approach. Now here in this FR24, it looks like the flight has actually attempting to make an approach via Sororang. Now where is Sororang? Now let me zoom in and show you. This is Sororang. Okay, here you can see. This is Sororang. And if you can see this river pattern, and if I can zoom in this in FR24, you can clearly see that this flight path, instead of going towards checkpoints like Dakar and Kaili, it has actually went through Sororang. And then it was attempted to make a turn, and that too, the weather was very poor with low visibility and with heavy rains also being reported there. And more additionally, between 4:05 and 4:20 a.m., the air traffic controllers have noticed the marine surveillance aircraft's trajectory, that their flight path is going way off course, so they have to redirect to the original flight path. So again here, like I told you, in this Flightradar 24, its flight path is incomplete. But it looks like in this Simbrief's Iraq cycle, latest Iraq cycle, you can clearly see that how way short it is. So I think my guess is, uh, did the flight went way, of course, starting from this checkpoint called Afita, then headed towards Sorang like this in a curve angle rather than going along ILS approach via runway 21 at Makassar. So they were actually preparing for landing at runway 21. They configured it for the ILS approach, but this one, it doesn't explain whether they made an ILS approach or not. So that's where the clue comes through when it comes to the ATC warning of the flight path deviation. So that would make things a little bit puzzling here. Again, that has to be checked by the investigators. But hopefully, if this Simbrief map does make sense, then okay, it would be a big payoff. Hopefully, if that comes true. But again, I must not say this is the actual flight path, because again, this has to be double checked and re-verified by the Flightradar 24 team and the investigation team also, especially these incomplete flight paths. And additionally, at the start also I mentioned that even if you check in the ADSB website also, they mentioned the flight path's last known location was at Singapore. It was exactly right here. Then afterwards, there's no data available in the ADSB too. So I was a bit puzzled about this possible flight path. So now, by taking reference to this Simbrief map and the comparison with the Flightradar 24's actual flight path of this marine surveillance aircraft, what it really made sense is that half of its flight paths were being followed, except in the final stages of the arrival at Makassar. That's where things went a little bit tricky to understand where it went wrong. So again, there are some few factors. Again, I don't want to assume it to be as a conclusive way, but a possible factors. Now, first thing is, even if you look into the post crash of this surveillance aircraft at that location, exactly at a mountainous terrain near Sorang, right? This is where the plane got crashed. So Bulasaraung National Park, right? So if you look into the backdrop of that terrain, you can clearly see that the weather was very foggy and visibility is very low, and even ATC has also issued that there's a heavy rains also going on there. So in such adverse conditions, one of the biggest problems is the pitot tubes. Now, pitot tubes are the vital tools, especially when it comes to understanding what's the terrain level the flight is maintaining it, what's the altitude, what's the speed, and also it shows the navigation details using these pitot tubes. Now, the biggest concern of this is once the pitot tubes are frozen, especially when you are flying in an adverse conditions, it gives a false readings both in your gyroscope and more importantly your navigation system. So pilots would get confused about at what altitude they are flying through and what heading they are flying through. And so that is one of the key risks here. So what the industry has done is they have introduced the De-Ice system. So De-Ice systems helps to, to melt the ice which is accumulated both on the wings and on the pitot tubes as well. So to keep the plane flying normally even despite these adverse conditions. But if we look into the ATR fleet overall, both 42s and 72s, the biggest problem is the de-icing conditions. Now, if you remember last year when I published on the Voepass Airlines flight 2Z22A3, which crashed in Brazil, right? So one of the key factors what I have seen on the preliminary report was the de-icing systems are not properly functioning. So because of that de-icing systems, it created a difficult situation when it comes to the stability of the aircraft for this ATR. And moreover, some were saying that there is a design flaw in the ATRs. Well, again, it all hands on to the avionic upgrades, whatever they are implementing it. So now there are dozens of ATRs flying throughout the world, now from 42s to 72s, right? So every year, based on any incidents, ATR is watching carefully when it comes to how to upgrade the avionics and how to upgrade the de-icing conditions. That's one of the key things that they have identified, and they are still figuring it out to this day. Right. So, but by looking at this crash and compared to Voepass crash, again, here it's much more different. But the only thing is that both were flown in a very adverse and worse weather conditions here. But the only difference is in the Voepass is the plane suddenly went stalled due to the high accumulation of the ice and then crashed. But in this marine surveillance aircraft crash, but I should say this was most probably, in my point, I should say, could be a pitot tube failure. Maybe pitot tubes were frozen, or maybe the de-icing system failed. Again, we cannot be so sure, but actually it was supposed to be upgraded properly. Now, like if you look into this particular airframe history, which I've told you before, right? So from airborne surveillance to marine surveillance, there could be some possible chance of upgrading its avionics. And another possible thing is that since ATR 42s are very old airframes, okay, now the only thing is the spares, a proper spares. Now, majority of the aircrafts which now they're operating around the world is the ATR 72s, which are very popular regional aircrafts, but compared to ATR 42s, well, they are very limited. Now, to get those particular spares from the decommissioned aircrafts does make things more challenging. Now, like I told the same thing in my previous video of UPS flight 2976, which crashed, killing all crew on board, and that has led to fatigue cracks in pylon assembly. So again, I also pitched the same, saying that this is because of the faulty parts which you are acquiring it from the spares from that decommissioned aircraft. So that does make even more riskier to fly. So that's the reason, maybe if there is a possibility of a maintenance issues here of this particular airframe, because it's a 25 years old aircraft, again that will be on hands to the investigators to get every single details as possible. But well, in the end, that's not a good year to start, guys, with this very unexpected tragedy. So my thoughts and condolences to the 11 passengers who unexpectedly perished, including the captain Andy Duhananto, who also unexpectedly perished. My thoughts and prayers to him as well. So, well, guys, so we will just wait and see the preliminary report. So what my expectations will be, the flight path of the marine surveillance aircraft. Did they follow this exact IRAC cycle or not? That has to be provided a clear response from the investigators by comparing with the Flightradar24 data, which we all are still waiting to get that input soon. And moreover, they also need to check the entire ATR fleets also, if in case there's a possibility of a de-icing system failure again, that also needs to be re-inspected there as well. So those are my thoughts, but again, it's all hands to the investigators to get it done. And maybe it might take months to get the first preliminary findings, and we'll see what the results may provide to us. All right, guys, so this is the sequence of events of the Indonesia Air's marine surveillance aircraft, which unexpectedly crashed. So thank you so much for watching this video. So please like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you again in the next one. Until then guys, fast flights and soft landings to you.